Hi everyone, this is BB Sangmay and today I'm going to discuss about the simple stresses in machine parts. So do subscribe for the latest videos of machine design. So let us discuss, first of all, let us discuss about the main reasons that is caused behind the stress. So in engineering practice, the machine parts are subjected to various forces which may be due to either one or more of the following reasons. So first is the energy transmitted. As we know that machine utilizes some energy to create some useful type of work, and obviously there will be different types of motions in the machine parts. Okay, so while transmitting the motion, forces get transmitted. So this force can be a reason behind the stress get induced inside the machine component. Second is the weight of the machine. Third is the frictional resistance. As we know that for every motion there will be a frictional resisting force, and it will be maximum when a part of machine which moves from the state of rest to the state of motion. So during that transition from the state of rest to the state of motion, a frictional resisting force will be more. So whatever the stress induced at that time, that will be the maximum. Fourth is the inertia of reciprocating part. Fifth is the change of temperature. As we know that many of the machine components works at high temperature, like piston, connecting rod, nut bolts of the pressure vessels. So a possibility of thermal stresses get induced inside the machine component. Okay. Sixth is the lack of balance of moving parts. As we know that in case of rotary and reciprocating machines, reciprocating and rotary parts, they may create unbalanced centrifugal type of forces. Because of that unbalanced centrifugal type of forces, there is a possibility of stress get induced inside the machine parts, like shafts, bearings. Okay. So different forces acting on machine parts produce various types of stresses. So let us discuss first of all types of loads which are acting on the machine components. So there are four types basically according to the subject point. Okay, the load is defined as any external force which acts on the machine part. So first is the dead or steady load. It is also called as a static load. A load is said to be dead or steady load when it does not change in magnitude or direction. So here we can consider the example of a building, any structure. Okay. Second is the live or variable load. A load is said to be a live or variable load when it changes continuously with respect to time in magnitude or direction. Here we can take the example of the objects, those or vehicles moving over the bridges. Third is the suddenly applied or shock load. A load is said to be suddenly applied or shock load when it is suddenly applied or removed. Here I would like to give the example of a suspension of a vehicle. Whatever the irregularities present over the road, these irregularities are transferred to the suspension by means of a wheel. Okay, so suspension actually absorb the irregularities. So sometimes the load in the case of suspension, the load is suddenly applied and it is removed. Fourth is the impact load. A load is said to be an impact load when it is applied with a certain velocity, certain initial velocity. Here we can take the example of blanking punching machine. So whatever the force required to shear off the sheet metal, okay, so that force is calculated and it is given to the punch. Okay, so according to that, certain velocity is required to give the punch so that it can create a hole, or it can create a blank, or it can create a pierce the sheet metal. Let us discuss about the stress. When some external system of forces or loads act on a body, the internal resisting force are set up at various sections of the body which resist the external forces. This internal resisting force per unit area at any section of the body is known as unit stress, or it is simply called as stress. It is denoted by the Greek letter sigma. Actually, mathematically, stress is equals to load upon area. Yes, P is the applied force or load, and A is the area of cross section of the body. Actually, in SI unit, stress is usually expressed in Pascal, such that 1 Pascal is equals to 1 Newton per meter square. In actual practice, we use the bigger units like gigapascal, megapascal. 1 megapascal is equals to 10⁶ Newton per meter square, which is equals to 1 Newton per mm square, and 1 gigapascal is equals to 10⁹ Newton per meter square, which is equals to 1 kilonewton per mm square. Let us discuss about the strength. When a system of forces or loads act on a body, it undergoes some deformation. This deformation per unit length is known as unit strain, or it is simply called as a strain. It is denoted by the Greek letter epsilon. Mathematically, strain is equals to change in length upon original length. Here delta L is the change in length and L is the original length of the body. Let us discuss about the tensile stress and tensile strain. So here I have considered one rod, one mechanical element of it looks like a rod of a circular cross sectional area, on which I am going to apply axial pull type of force. So here you can observe that this is the axial pull type of force which I have applied on the component. When I apply a load of magnitude P of axial pull type, there is a possibility of internal resisting force. Obviously the internal resisting force will be developed by the component itself. That in this internal resisting force, this is the internal resisting force, you can see that the magnitude is exactly opposite to the applied force. So this is nothing but the stress which is induced inside the component. It is the internal resisting force. Okay, so when a body is subjected to two equal and opposite axial pulls, then the stress induced at any section of the body is called as a tensile stress. Okay, so mathematically tensile stress is actually equals to sigma T is equals to P by A. P is the applied force on the body, A is the cross sectional area. So according to the cross sectional area, the value of stress is going to vary. Obviously when the cross sectional area is going to increase, the stress is going to decrease. When the cross sectional area will be less, stress will be maximum. Let us discuss about the tensile strength. Okay, so once again I have considered the element of a circular cross sectional area on which I am going to apply the force P. The length of the element is L. After the application of force, I observed that the length is little bit increased and the diameter is little bit decreased. So L is the original length and delta L is the increased length. Okay, so here the strain is actually, it is the ratio of change in length upon original length. So mathematically epsilon T is equals to delta L upon L. So this is nothing but the tensile strain. Let's discuss about the compressive stress and compressive strain. So when a body is subjected to two equal and opposite axial push type of force, okay, then the stress induced at any section of the body is called as a compressive stress. So once again I am going to consider an example of a rod on which I am going to apply a push type of force, compressive type of force of equal magnitude. After the application of force, the internal resisting force will develop inside the component. So this internal resisting force will exactly opposite to the applied force. So this is internal resisting force is called as a compressive stress, because whatever the load is applied, it is axial push type of load. Okay, so mathematically compressive stress sigma C is equals to applied force P divided by area under compression. Okay, so here area is, this is the area. So here in both the cases of tensile stress and compressive stress, here we can see that whatever the applied force, it is actually perpendicular to the area of cross section, and also stress is perpendicular, that is normal to the area of cross section. Now compressive strain. So here I have I am going to apply a force of magnitude P on a component of length L. After the application of force, I observed that the length of component is little bit reduced. Sorry. So this is the new length and this is the change in length. This much amount of length is reduced of amount of delta L after the application of force. So L minus delta L is the new length. So the strain, compressive strain will be epsilon C is equals to delta L upon original length L. Let us discuss about the Young's modulus or modulus of elasticity. So Hooke's law states that when a material is loaded within elastic limit, the stress is directly proportional to strain. That is, stress sigma is proportional to strain epsilon. So here one constant of proportionality is considered. Sigma is equals to E into epsilon, where E is called as a modulus of elasticity, or else it is also called as a Young's modulus. Here sigma is equals to P by A and epsilon is equals to delta L upon L. So the value of E can be calculated by using the formula E is equals to PL upon A into delta L, where E is the constant of proportionality known as Young's modulus or modulus of elasticity. P is the applied force, L is the original length of the component, A is the cross sectional area of the component, and delta L is the change in length of the component. Now shear stress. When a body is subjected to two equal and opposite forces acting tangentially across the resisting sections, as a result of which the body tends to shear off the section, then the stress induced is called as a shear stress. So here I will give the example of a lap joint. single riveted lap joint. Okay, here you can see that the two plates are connected by means of a rivet. So on the upper plate the force is acting towards the left side, and on the lower plate the force is acting towards the right side. After the application of force, there is a possibility of failure of a rivet at here at this border, at this line where the two plates are in contact with each other. There may be a possibility of shear of this rivet can fail in the shear manner along this plane. Okay, so the rivet develops the internal resisting forces, that is nothing but shear. Okay, shear stress. So this is the resisting force. Here you can see that, which is actually resisting the deformation of the rivet. So here actually the shear stress is represented by the Greek letter tau. Mathematically, shear stress is equals to tangential force divided by resisting area. But as we have seen in case of compressive stress and tensile stress, whatever the force applied, it is actually normal to the area under area which is subjected to failure. Exactly in case of tensile stress and compressive stress, whatever the applied force is, the force is perpendicular to the area under failure. But in case of shear stress, here you can see that the force acts over the area. It acts tangential to area. Okay, so here you can see that this is the rivet. On this rivet, P is the force applied by the upper plate towards the left side, and this is the P force which is applied by the lower plate towards the right side. So this is the plane where the possibility of failure of rivet, it will fail in shear. Okay, so this is the section along which it is going to shear off. So after the failure, it will look like this. Okay, so this is the applied force, upper portion, which is inside the upper plate, and this is the lower portion of the rivet which is contained inside the lower plate. Okay, so this is the shear stress which is acting over the area, and this is the resisting area. So this is the area of cross section of rivet, which is A is equals to pi by 4 d square, where d is the diameter of rivet. So the shear stress will be tau is equals to P by A, which is equals to P divided by pi by 4 d square, which is equals to tau is equals to 4P divided by pi d square. When in case of number of rivets are going to increase, we need to multiply the area by number of rivets. Or when we are dealing with the more than 2 plates, in case of 3 plates, there will be 2 shear planes, means area will be double, and the formula will be tau is equals to P by 2A. Now crushing stress. Crushing stress, it is the localized compressive stress at the surface of the contact between two members of a machine part that are relatively at rest, is known as crushing stress. The crushing stress is taken into account in the design of riveted joints, quarter joints, knuckle joints, etc. So once again I am going to give the example of a 2 plates which are connected. It is the lap joint connected by means of a rivet. So the upper plate is moving towards the left side, lower plate is moving towards the right side. Now let us assume that the rivet is strong in shear. It will not fail along this plane, but there is a possibility of crushing of rivet inside this part. Upper portion of the rivet is contained inside the upper plate, lower part is contained inside the lower plate. Okay, so here you can see that after application of force P, this surface of the I will highlight this surface. Okay, so this surface and this surface, it is subjected to crush. It can get crushed inside the plate if the rivet will not fail along this plane in shear. In that case, this part of this portion of this is the highlighted portion, this highlighted portion which is contained in the upper plate, and this highlighted portion which is contained in the lower plate. So along this portion there is a possibility of crushing failure of the rivet. So let us see how the crushing stress is calculated. Okay, so this is the figure here. Here you can see that here this is the thickness of the plate. This is the lower part of the rivet which is contained inside the lower plate, and this is the diameter along, this is the maximum diameter. Okay, actually this is the maximum area along which the shear is going to happen. Okay, so let me highlight this. So this is the area under crushing. Okay, this is the maximum area, which is the diameter of rivet which can get crushed, and this is the height of that plate along which the crushing happens. So this is the area under crushing will be D into T. So crushing stress sigma C is equals to P divided by dt into N, and here N represents the number of rivets. If you will go for 2, 3, 4 rivets, the value of N is going to increase. Okay, so here I have given actually the example of a single riveted joint, so and the value of N will be 1. So sigma C is the crushing stress, D is the diameter of rivet, which is the maximum dimension which is going to which will be under crushing stress. T is the thickness of plate. Okay, so the crushing strength, crushing stress is actually totally depend on dt into N. Okay, now bearing pressure. So it may be noted that the local compression which exists at the surface of contact between two members of a machine part and that are having relative motion. Okay, this part is very important. Okay, so this makes the difference between the crushing stress and bearing pressure. Okay, so the relative motion is very important word. Okay, this makes the difference between crushing stress and bearing pressure. In case of crushing stress, there will not be any kind of relative motion, but in case of bearing pressure, will be a relative motion. So this term is commonly used in design of journal supported in bearings, pins for levers, crank pins, clutch linings, etc. So let us consider a journal rotating in a fixed bearing as shown in figure. So I will show a figure. Here you can see that this is the shaft or journal which is rotating inside the fixed bearing. L is the length of fixed bearing, D is the diameter of journal. So as we know that there will be a load, any kind of load on the shaft, a radial load. Because of the radial load, the pressure acting on the journal will be maximum along this along the lower part of, if suppose the load is acting vertically downward direction, in that case the pressure will act at the bottommost part of the journal or shaft. So here you can see the pressure pattern. The pressure will be maximum at the lower portion, and it is actually reducing towards the when you will go towards the circumference, towards the ends of the shaft. Okay, so here the bearing pressure, actually the journal exerts the bearing pressure on the curved surface of the brasses immediately below it. Okay, the distribution of the bearing pressure will not be uniform, as I have explained. It will be maximum at this portion, okay, and it will be minimum at the circumference at the ends of the shaft. Okay, the distribution of bearing pressure will be similar to, actually it is I have shown in figure B. Since the actual bearing pressure is difficult to determine, therefore the average bearing pressure is usually calculated by dividing the load to the projected area of the curved surfaces in contact. Here the actual bearing area is difficult to calculate, so the average area is considered. Okay, so thus the bearing pressure is actually PB equals to P is the applied pressure or force, and divided by L is the length of the portion, which is the length of the portion of the journal which is contained inside the fixed bearing. Okay, and D is the diameter of journal. So the bearing pressure, basic difference between bearing pressure and crushing stress is when there will be a relative motion, the stress is called as a bearing pressure, and when there will not be any kind of motion, it is called as a crushing stress. Now stresses due to bending moment. Okay, here I am going to consider a member. This is the neutral axis. Okay, so as we know that many of the machine parts, let us take the example of a shaft. Okay, shafts are used to transmit the torque. Okay, so to transmit the torque, sometimes there is a pulley is mounted on the shaft or gear is mounted on the shaft. So there is a possibility of bending of shaft because of the whatever the tension on tight side, slack side of the belt, or in case of a radial force applied by the gear. Okay, so let us see what kind of stress get induced inside the shaft when it is subjected to bending moment. So let me explain here. I have just given the example of I have considered one member of rectangular cross sectional area of width B and thickness D. Okay, so I'm going to bend this shaft in the vertically along this section XX. So at this portion bending will be maximum, so I'm going to apply the bending moment like this. So let us apply the bending moment of magnitude MB. Okay, so when I will apply a bending moment, I will try to bend this member, this beam Okay, the lower portion of the neutral axis, this is the lower portion of the neutral axis, that will be subjected to tensile stress, and the upper portion of the neutral axis, that will be subjected to compressive type of stress. Okay, so let us see how the stress pattern will be there. So during this part of the lower part, tensile type of stress will be there, and above the neutral axis there will be a compressive type of stress. Okay, so here you can see that the stresses are actually increasing towards the surface, and it is the stress pattern is decreasing towards the neutral axis in the both the cases, in case of compression and in case of tension also. So at the surface of the shaft or whatever the member, the stress will be maximum at this portion, at this line, the stress will be maximum, maximum tension will be there, and at this line a maximum compressive stress will be there. Okay, so here y is the distance of extreme fiber from the neutral axis. Here you can see that these are the two extreme fibers. Okay, and these two extreme fibers are subjected to maximum amount of stress. This fiber is subjected to maximum amount of tensile stress. This fiber is subjected to maximum amount of compressive stress. So y is the distance of extreme fiber from the neutral axis. Okay, so here the bending stress is calculated by using the formula sigma b is the bending stress is equals to mb. Mb is the bending moment, and that can be calculated by using the formula force into perpendicular distance. We know that the bending moment will be maximum at this area. So to calculate the bending moment at this cross section, we should have the length of this member. So we can use the force which is applied, magnitude of force which is applied on to create the bending moment, force into perpendicular distance, and by using the formula we can calculate mb. Y is the distance of extreme fiber from the neutral axis, as already I have discussed. Y is half of d. Okay, d is the thickness of this beam, and I is the moment of inertia. Now how the I is calculated for the rectangular cross section? Actually there is a formula. I is equals to bd cube divided by 12. B is the width parallel to the distance parallel to the neutral axis, and d is the thickness, which is distance perpendicular to the neutral axis in mm. Okay, similarly if I will consider a circular cross section, in case of circular cross section, the value of I is going to change. It will be pi by 64 d raised to 4, where d is the diameter of this shaft. Okay, so by using this formula we can calculate the bending stress which is induced inside the machine part, which is subjected to bending moment. So according to the cross section, the value of I, that is moment of inertia, that is going to change. Now the torsional shear stress. When the shaft is subjected to most of the cases, the shaft is actually used to transmit the torque. Okay, we can take the example of a propeller shaft, which is used to connect the gearbox and a differential unit. Okay, so the torsional, while transmitting the torque, whatever the stress induced inside the shaft, that will be the torsional shear stress. Okay, so let us consider one shaft at here. I have shown one shaft at here. Okay, it is having a length L. I am going to apply the torque to this side. I am going to apply the twisting moment in clockwise direction, and at the end I am going to apply the twisting moment in anti-clockwise direction. So MT is the applied torque. Okay, so when I will apply the torque, the extreme fiber which is present on the surface of the shaft, here you can see that when I will apply this torque, this point is going to move towards the clockwise, towards this side in a clockwise manner. Okay, so this is the angle theta is the angle of twist. Okay, which is the angle traced by this point after the application of torque or twist. Okay, so here let us see what kind of how the stress is actually distributed. I'm going to draw a side view of this shaft. Okay, so on this, here you can see that when I will apply a torque of magnitude or twist torsional moment of magnitude mt after the application of force, the stress pattern will be along half of the portion of the shaft at this part. Okay, a shear stress, a resisting shear stress, or you can call it as a resisting force, is which is going to resist the deformation, which is going to resist the angle of twist theta. So this is nothing but the shear stress, and you can observe the pattern. the stress is actually increasing when you will go from the center of the shaft towards the circumference. The stress is increasing, and at the center, that is at the axis of the shaft, the stress is actually minimum. Okay, similarly in the upper portion of the shaft, the stress pattern will be like this. Okay, which is going to resist the twisting moment, which is going to resist the torsional moment. Okay, so here again you can see that the torsional shear stress is maximum at the circumference and it is decreasing towards the center of the shaft. So let us calculate the value of tau by using the formula. Tau is actually calculated by using the formula mtr by j, where tau is the induced torsional shear stress, which is the induced resisting force against the twisting moment. Mt is the twisting moment. Then how to calculate? The question is how to calculate Mt. In the problem, actually the power is given, speed of the shaft, at which speed the shaft is rotating, and what is the amount of power that will be transmitted by the shaft is given. And by using the formula, P is equals to, that is power is equals to 2 pi n. N is the speed of the shaft, Mt is the torsional moment divided by 60. So by using the same formula, we can calculate the Mt, that is twisting moment, but we should have the value of power transmitted, which is to be transmitted, and speed of the shaft. Here r is the distance of extreme fiber from the neutral axis. This is the extreme fiber, so r is nothing but the radius of shaft. J is the polar moment of inertia. Okay, so let us see how this formula is used when the shaft is designed on the basis of strength. Okay, now let us design the shaft on the basis of rigidity, torsional rigidity. So the formula theta is equals to mtl divided by j into g is used when we have to go for the design of the shaft on the basis of torsional rigidity. So here theta is the angle of twist. This is it can be calculated by using this formula. Mt, as I have already said, Mt we can calculate it by using the formula power. L is the length of shaft, J is polar moment of inertia, and G is modulus of rigidity. Here J, polar moment of inertia, it is for the solid circular shaft. The value of J is pi by 32 d raised to 4, and for the hollow circular cross section, the value of J is pi into bracket d raised to 4 minus d raised to 4 divided by 34, where for the hollow circular cross section, do is the outer diameter and di is the inner diameter of that hollow circular shaft. And let us see how to calculate Mt by using the formula P is equals to 2 pi n Mt divided by 60 into 10 raised to 6. Okay, so here P is the power which is to be transmitted, which is obviously it will be given in the problem. Okay, N is the speed of rotation of shaft, and Mt, which is the torque or twisting moment, torque which is to be transmitted. So by using this formula, we can calculate the torque. Once you will calculate the torque, we just have to put the value of torque at here, and we can calculate the angle of twist. Okay, or by using this formula we can calculate the diameter of shaft. So we can design shaft on the basis of rigidity and on the basis of strength. Okay, thank you.